Well, good afternoon, traders. Joe with you here on the Currency Recap. Happy Halloween to you. It's the 31st of October. It's Thursday. Let's jump into it. I'm going to break down the meaningful news of the day. Let's take a look at things technically. And if I've got some trades, let's go out and share them.
Disclaimer. This video was created for professional Forex and crypto traders. Maverick Currencies is a proprietary trading firm that employs professional traders around the world. Our traders trade firm capital and keep 70 to 80% of profits they generate. All trades and analysis in this video are for professional traders only. If you are interested in becoming a professional Forex and currency trader for Maverick, click the apply button in the video description. Let's break down what happened today.
As we move into the market analysis, you guys can see it was a pretty, I'd say, bearish day when it comes to the U.S. Well, let's get into it. The U.S. earnings results continue to drive the market volatility. Microsoft and Meta leading the market lower today. Quite a big move to the downside. Microsoft actually beat their numbers. A little bit of worries of increased costs when it comes to AI development. Numbers come out and they beat, and the markets just decide to sell them off, and that's what we've been seeing. So it did lead the majority of the push down. We also saw Coin and Hood. Those actually missed numbers, adding to an already volatile crypto market that has been pretty crazy. Boy, we're back up to almost all-time highs there on Bitcoin for a second. But boy, they're up and down quite a bit. Now, Coin and Hood are kind of losing their niche when it comes to crypto-specific firms because there's so many ETFs coming out that are being honored by almost everybody nowadays. So we'll see where that goes. But the volatility is kind of crazy. So the yen was the biggest winner, and I think that could be a flight to safety. A little bit of fear going on. We'll talk about it again, guys. But in election anxiety, the pound dropped a little bit. I'm not sure there specifically, but outside of those two, not much movement. In fact, when I was doing the velocity scoring, I had to move one or two of them, one up or one down. That's it. The only big movers were the pound and the yen. So not much more than that. We'll take a look at that pairing for fun. The S&P down 1.86%. It was a good sell-off across all three of the majors in the U.S. today. Crypto down 4.21. Obviously, the larger ones, if you kind of separate out, we'll see here in a second. But gold down 1.44. But oil had a pop to the upside. So there's all sorts of fun stuff going on. Is it flights to safeties, a little bit of worries, some anxieties? And the answer is yes to all of it. It's a lot of posturing going on as of late. It has made it super difficult to trade these markets. Take a look at the cryptos here. Big move to the downside on the cryptos today. But we have seen them have a pretty massive run up into these areas, and then the next day it just kind of flips over. So let's take a look at the outlook on the markets. I only really had to flip over the 20-day moving average. So with a very big move to the downside with some good volume, well, let me just jump into it, folks. You can see that this candlestick held at that 50-day moving average. So it's not like it's completely falling apart. Boy, it feels like it. But what I am focusing on, and this is why this chart's a little bit more zoomed out, is there's a very good support level right here. We are seeing an increase in that volume, which would be expected based on some worries or fears going into an election. But economic-wise, we're right in line. Yeah, maybe there are some companies in there that are overvalued and some worries about projected earnings and all that. But yeah, it's a very scary candle. I get it. And it was a very volatile day. But the volatility index, about 20, just over 20. But this can actually stop and turn on a dime. We know that. We know that there's a little bit of schizophrenia when it comes to reaction. So by charting it, I'm not bearish at all, by the way, folks. I had to move my outlook to a +1 because we're below the 20, but the slopes are still decent. The 20 is above the 50. It's still within a tradable range as it's revisiting some supports that we saw in the end of August. So yeah, it's scary today, but hey, we'll see what happens tomorrow. So I'm not changing much. Speaking of which, this is what I think has made things a lot difficult for anybody trying to trade the U.S. here and trying to lean on economic numbers. Look at this 80p non-farm employment change. Huge surprise to the upside. And it's not just, hey, we're adding jobs. It's that we're not really laying people off. We got up 2.8%. So the GDP is actually showing some cooling. This number does get revised 2 or 3 times, so it might kind of pan itself out. But slowing down is actually kind of what the Fed wanted to do. But when it comes to unemployment, it's as strong as it gets. Then we got unemployment claims. And I thought that just kind of added to it as well. As long as along with, excuse me, folks, a inline PCE number. It doesn't get much softer than this. Everything that Powell, I think that the Fed wants to see is happening. So we're left with what? We're left with, well, okay, I guess we got to pick and choose individual companies. Obviously, we can lean on an election. But as far as the U.S. economy, there's just nothing bearish. So I'm going to have to keep my glass half full for now. Let's do a real quick currency analysis. Like I say, folks, there wasn't too much change outside of the yen. So let's just go out and do a quick breakdown of everything and kind of see where we stand. First off, folks, I'm going to start with the yen as always. And you can see that had a little bit of a bounce, a huge move to the upside velocity-wise. And I'm thinking that's a flight to safety. I truly do. But with the flip in the SARS, a little bit of a slope there, which I didn't really want to give it a score up or down, but this is definitely very strong. Yeah, I had to move it up to a +2. Probably the biggest mover, definitely for today outside of the pound. Next up, let's just take a look at the US dollar. And you can see it just kind of consolidated. We were sloping a little bit lower. I believe we had this at a -1 for the SAR, 0 and a 0. So the US dollar was a -1, and I'm just going to bump it up to a 0 because we just flipped the SAR. It hasn't changed at all. It's consolidating, and I'll say it again, folks. I thought this was going to have a bigger move than it did, especially based on today. But I do believe that the comfort the dollar has and the strength of the U.S. economy is probably why it's not going all over the place right now. Earnings is the main driver of the volatility, I think, in the equity markets. Let's move over to the franc. Here's the franc. This one's just going to bump up to 0. I think I had it at -1, or we had it yesterday at -1. Flipping the SAR, slight slope up there, but more of a consolidation. No real change on that. Let's go to the euro. It's been strong. I decided to show it a little bit more strength. So good slope up, flip on the SAR there, and then flat. So +2 on the euro. We could try to use it. I'll take a look at it paired against the pound. But it's been in a pretty nice trend over the last little bit. I just like it. It just seems to be climbing. The pound itself decided to flip, and it flipped pretty hard. And it's very difficult for me to grab something and move it from a 0 to a -3 or a -1/3. But this was pretty good move to this side, downside here. So definitely flipping the SAR, big drop in the RSI, and it did roll that over. So I decided to cut it a break because of this arch. You could go with -3 on this. I decided to just put it there as well. You could argue that it's a -2 because there's this arc here, but I said, with that much velocity behind it, I went ahead and bumped it down to a -3. Let's go to the CAD. CAD just kind of mellowed itself out. Look at this flip-flop. So we had a negative SAR, it flipped to positive, and then flipped back to a negative, and all over the place. Above the 50, this RSI hiccup is pretty interesting. I'm still glass half empty on this, but on the score side, folks, I had to give it just a 0. I could see a -1 on that because there is a slight slope here on the RSI. But where the hiccup comes, folks, is if you take a look at this box, it's just sideways. So I decided, let's just keep it 0, but I am leaning towards a break. And if I see that, I will be more than excited to -1, -2, and put it against something stronger. Let's go to the Aussie dollar. The Aussie just kind of flattened itself out. Once again, you could see it was only up 0.02%. Just nothing really to do about it, so I just left it where it was at a -1. And the reason being is this is kind of sloping up, but it's sideways. This is sloping down, and now it's flat just because the SAR flipped. I truly think that it's going to go back to 0, so I decided to put it down at a -1, at least for today. Kiwi's the exact same thing. It's flat on the RSI. It's still below the 50. That's fine, but it flipped over here on the SAR and then just flat, so I decided to keep the Kiwi at -1, I think where we had it yesterday. I don't think I really moved it. And since we're here, and I know you're curious, let's just go ahead through the cryptocurrencies. These most of them just took a step to the left. Anything that was a -1 is now a -2, and I think the one that I moved the most was Litecoin. Let's take a look at it, and I think I moved it to a -3. There it is, yeah. A little flip here, a good roll over there, and a great drop there. So -2, -3, that's fine. But let me go back to Bitcoin. They're all very similar, folks. This is a very difficult game to play. I mean, we were back up touching, almost all-time highs that, it's ever been to. And then it just consolidates, and then it drops, and it's just super reactive to any sort of political news, especially when it comes to election worries. So So here's the velocity score. As you guys could see, I moved a couple things up, maybe down. The biggest movers were the yen and the pound. So what am I looking for when it comes to possible trades? Guess what? It's going to be the pound yen. And then I figured, hey, let's take a look at the euro yen as well. Or excuse me, folks, I meant to say euro pound as well. So actually, let's just start with that one. Let me jump over to it. And I like it. I love the pattern. I think it's great. But I unfortunately, when you get two currencies that move that aggressive in both directions, one up, one down, you're kind of late to the party. So I figured, okay, well, can I do something maybe a little bit more longer term when it comes to that? And you can see it's pretty extended. I would love to catch it as it broke maybe this area or even back in this area. But the way these things have been moving, they're just too quick. So consolidation or pullback, I'm a little behind on that. Now, if you look at the daily, it really doesn't correlate with anything. This thing was already getting hurt as far as combo, and then it just had this, guess what? You went down, I went up. Bam, this huge oversold bounce. There's not much you can do with it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just throw that out. So let's take a look at the next one. This is the pound yen. I thought the pound yen would have a little bit more to it, and it kind of doesn't because the yen, once again, had such a move to the upside. It just threw everything off. Now, moving forward, yes, if we could see maybe some stabilization there or even a small little bear rally and it could roll over, that'd be great. I'd like to see this RSI pop up a little bit and then roll over. But you could see in this situation, even with the euro pound, I mean, we're days off. But if you wanted to go ahead and try to pair something weaker, get something weaker, you're just going to get an anemic move. So I look for the strength, I look for the weakness. But the problem is, folks, they change their minds so quick. It's very difficult for me to string things together. In fact, let's take a look at it here on the daily. And on the daily, you have, and I think I've talked to you guys about this, one of my favorite patterns, an ascending triangle pattern that actually breaks coming from a huge correction. I like it. So it tries to stair step itself up. It sets a little bit higher of a low. It sets this first high, it sets another high right there, it sets this low, so it starts to stair step. And what I'm looking for is, well, let me draw this line a little better, a nice area, and this was tough because it consolidated before it popped. And this breakout is probably one of my favorites. They do retrace, so hey, could this do it again? Yeah, we just got to see if it'll consolidate and turn, but we're days away. And that's kind of what I've found in the trades that I've been looking for is they react so quick. To slow play them, we're going to have to wait. And to play them with velocity, we're going to have to be quick. We'll probably miss them. So I'm just going to sit back, let things kind of settle out, and see if I can't find a better opportunity a little bit later. So what do I got for you? Not a lot. It was kind of interesting. I saw a big move in the yen, a big move in the pound, and that's it. Everything else just slid a little left or slid a little right. There's not a lot to compare to. The U.S. economy is showing stability, and that I think is what's kind of curbing the dollar for now to not really go up or down, even though the U.S. markets are all over the place. And all this volatility, I truly believe it's most likely due to earnings results and projections. Microsoft beat their numbers, but the projections of costs of AI in the future might have spooked some people. And if that wasn't enough, it could just be election anxiety. A lot of people want to be in cash, and right, we've got today and we got tomorrow, and then we have a weekend, and boy, we're already into ballots, and we're going to be getting into the elections here, right, next week. So if people want out, this is probably the last time they can do it. So I think election anxiety has a lot to it. Folks, I'm not trading. You shouldn't trade if you don't need to. Just step back, relax, play relative strength and weakness. And right now, it's difficult to calculate. Cash is always a position. We say that a lot here at Maverick. So just be aware of that. All right, guys, thanks for joining me. I hope this was helpful. Talk to you next time. Bye, everybody.